Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome. Welcome. If you've been following along, we do these daily lives as many days as we can. I try to dedicate my Friday. Welcome. I try to dedicate my Fridays to just sharing some lessons from the week. Can't even speak. Okay, can't even speak. Life lessons from the week. This is a way to challenge myself to grow. First, it was a personal challenge, just me and my diary saying every week, all right, let's reflect on what went well, what could have been improved, how did I feel, getting in touch with my intuition, all that good stuff. And then I thought, well, hey, listen, why not share it? There's this expression, working out loud. I don't know if some of you have heard of that. This is like when, you're building a startup, and instead of waiting until the startup is, quote, successful to launch it, you kind of just put it out there first. Oh, good to see you, Jean. You missed all the lives. By the way, if you want to rewatch any of the lives that we do, they are all on the Ladies Get Paid LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook platforms. I've now been interviewing coaches who tackle different avenues of helping women earn more and live better. So you can learn from them over on our channels. And by the way, I'm on Instagram as well right now. So if you see my eyes going back and forth, you know why. We don't normally go on Instagram during the week. I'm actually trying to stay away from my phone. That was a big lesson this week, I have to say, was actually removing my phone from my vicinity, literally putting it in another room. I also have iMessage on my computer. So if anyone really does need to get in touch with me, like my phone will ring or my computer will ring. But for me, it was really a way of not going on Instagram, not checking social media. And here's the thing, even when you have your phone near you, even if you're not checking it, you're subconsciously probably still desiring to check it. There's still that kind of like magnetic pull, at least I feel. Hi, Morgan. Good to see you. And so just not having my phone near me this week really was a game changer for that kind of subconscious lightening of no longer feeling the magnetic pull of must check social media. One thing, though, that I didn't do that well was I really wanted to challenge myself to, in the morning, not look at my phone immediately. It was so hard. So the best that I could do was about 20 minutes of phone time. 20 minutes of phone time. I also, if I started to look at a certain person's, Instagram profile or read an article and it made me feel negative in any way, shape, or form, next, that was a big thing I did this week. It was like, if I'm not feeling great about this, like I was reading an article, I think about like a shelter for animals. Nope, next. Like so it wasn't about the absence of checking social media. It was being way more conscious and intentional in the way that I was checking social media and saying to myself, listen, ideally, I'd like to work up to a place where I don't check it first thing in the morning. I'm not there yet. So keeping it to 20 minutes, that was progress, right? Being intentional, that was progress. This is how I truly hope you all embrace life. When you reflect on it, it is not about what you necessarily accomplished. It's just about, did you have any growth? Just any growth. Because sometimes what you think you want to accomplish, things change. And the process, the experience teaches you more than whatever the result of the accomplishment was. So, by the way, I'm Claire Wasserman here, founder and author of Ladies Get Paid. We are an educational platform, global community, and book all about helping women earn more and live better. And as you know, for the last couple of weeks or months now, I've been coming on live on Friday just to, touch base with everybody and to share some stuff that I worked on this week, some things that I learned. And I started to prepare. I like to prepare, but then I stopped. So I'm just going to share with you very authentically and organically what this week was about for me. So I am about to launch, you're going to see it either Monday or Tuesday. I'm going to launch a LinkedIn newsletter. It's going to come from Ladies Get Paid. It's going to come from Claire Wasserman. So not Ladies Get Paid technically. So it's going to just be me. And it's going to be me detailing out to you everything that's gone on in the past couple of years. And what I've learned from that. And it's going to be a full year of weekly newsletters. And I'm going to just be very brutally honest with you about what this whole thing, how it all started and what I'm hoping to do with it. And here's what I learned. So I basically have spent my whole life in high achievement mode. I come from a very, I would say, intense family. And in my high achievement, and by the way, I'm not unique to this. I think anybody who grows up in capitalism subscribes to hustle culture, whether you want to or not. And especially if you are a woman, you probably have that inner drive to not only hustle, but to hustle perfectly. And I very much have been that girl, just like hit after a hit at an early age of accomplishments. I mean, everything from being, in a Broadway musical when I was 9. Like, I wrote an essay in 6th grade and got invited to the Supreme Court for an award. I got a play professionally produced in high school. Like, just all of these accolades. And it was a friggin' high, right? Like, it felt really good, but it is also really scary when you are basing your sense of self and self-love on the external reception of others, right? The achievements, how other people see those achievements. And the stakes only keep getting higher. You know why? Because the goalposts keep moving, especially if you have a lot of success early on, I think. Instead of it necessarily giving you confidence, which it totally did in many ways, it validated, what I felt to be were my talents. When you have all this success, for me at least, when I had all this success at an early stage, it made me feel like there was no room for error. And every year, not just every year, but like every couple of months, I needed to be churning out like hit after hit. I was living in New York, lived in New York for a decade. I was operating at a very high-paced speed. And part of it driven from the fact that I was not subsidized by my parents. I moved to New York with literally $300 in my bank account, and I lived on my cousin Jay's couch in the Bronx. Yay, Jay. But so, I was just like, I had to make it, right? And it was just constant. Then I moved to LA about 3 years ago with my wife, Ashley. Our business needed some saving. Our Ladies Get Paid was entirely based in-person events, which we know stopped during the pandemic, and largely subsidized by brand sponsorships, which were the first budgets to go in the pandemic. I also was coming off of the tail end of a 2-year process of writing a book. I'd gotten a book deal, which was amazing, but also came with it lots of really intense emotions of reconciling my own imposter syndrome and perfectionism. And so by the time everyone else started to shelter in place, I was ready to like bust out, because I, for 2 years, had kind of sequestered myself in writing this book, which I don't think I realized how much damage that kind of did to myself, because I'm such a social person. But I had a really hard time focusing, if I didn't sequester myself. So then I'm going into this pandemic. We move out of New York, we're in Los Angeles, I'm done with my book, and I just crash. But what seemed like kind of a much needed, and well-deserved break turned into like a full-blown existential crisis. Okay. Like, I could not figure out how to get myself motivated again. All my go-to, all my usual motivators, everything from, tapping into the fire to close the wage gap, to, reading beautiful things that people sent me from Ladies Get Paid, and the impact I've had. Those are the things that always had kept me going. They were not working anymore. My kind of inner mean girl, the like, get your butt off the couch and work, that part of me had always been a motivator. I didn't like it, but it worked. Now, all of a sudden, it wasn't working. And I was at a complete loss of what to do. And I might be sharing all this. You might be listening thinking, this is a bit late to, of course, during the pandemic, so many of us had these existential moments, I think, because, for everyone, we were just startled out of our status quo. Life as we knew it was no longer that way. Therefore, it was a forced inflection point for us to say, hey, how do we want to live? And I think part of the reason why I had a really hard time getting myself motivated again to work was because I always associated work with high intensity, high adrenaline. I was afraid that if I jumped back on that hamster wheel, I wouldn't be able to get out of it again. And I didn't want to work like that. But quite frankly, I didn't know how else to work. In an ideal world, I would work, with a very intentional, grounded energy, right? Where I'm very focused, but I also can take breaks. versus this like frenetic functioning that I had always been doing. But I didn't, it's like, I almost felt like a toddler, right? Like I needed to learn how to walk again or crawl before I could walk, let alone run. And I also was having a really hard time tapping back into my intuition. It was something that I had really always prided myself on. I felt pretty connected to myself, but realized that over the years, I kind of compartmentalized a lot of my feelings. I was so busy just doing, and I never stopped to really just be. And I reflected on just some major shit that had gone on in the past. And I encourage you, by the way, everyone, do this for yourself to, just think about major milestones in your life and the things that they maybe have taught you or shown you and ways that they've influenced, the narratives that you tell yourself about the world. And I realized something that was pretty major that had happened 8 years ago that I never really reflected on the significance of was a diagnosis that I received. So yeah, I would say 8 years ago, I was diagnosed with bipolar type 2 disorder. And I kind of brushed over it, didn't think of it as a big deal. I just started taking a lot of meds. I want to be very clear right now. I am not against taking medication at all, at all. But and you're going to see this in a LinkedIn newsletter that I post next week. I'm going to tell you all the meds that I was prescribed. I was taking, I think at one point, it was 3 daily. Then I had like 4 or 5 other kinds of meds that I would rotate on a periodic basis. I was taking at like 3 different anti-anxieties, antidepressant, mood stabilizer. I had something for social anxiety, flying anxiety. I had 2 different kinds of sleeping pills. I was prescribed ADHD medication that I only stopped because Los Angeles pharmacies ran out of them. I at some point was addicted, for sure. I was addicted to Ativan, love Ativan, addicted to Ativan. Man, I was really drugged up. And so interestingly, it all kind of hit me when I was trying so desperately to tap into my intuition and I couldn't fucking hear it. And I also was looking at my life, and the fact that I was spending so much of my days just shuffling between the bedroom where I was napping to the kitchen where I was snacking and back again. Clearly on the surface of it, things were not okay. But if you were to ask me how I felt, I literally felt fine. I did not feel depressed. Trust me, I know what it's like to feel depressed. That's what got me into therapy. That's what got me into psychiatry in the first place. But I literally felt fine. And I thought, this is crazy. How do I feel fine emotionally? It's like if I'm looking at an ocean, there are no waves. It's perfectly still. But when you look at my day and it is spent mostly in bed, clearly things are not fine. Dang, I was so disconnected from myself, deep core self. And no wonder I was really freaked out of working again, because who was I? Like, what was I working with? And an aha moment I had was when I was pushing my cat in a stroller. Yes, this is the aha moment. Literally, I was proud of myself. I got myself out of bed, dressed, went for a walk, had bought a stroller for my cat. And she's looking up at me going like, what the hell? Like, this cat does not want to be in a stroller. And I was like, you're right. What am I doing? It was little Phoebe's face looking up at me in terror that made me resolve to finally figure out a different way of solving my shit. Okay. It wasn't going to be meds anymore. It was. I was obviously going to not just go off the meds. But if I wanted to experiment with maybe less meds, reducing them or different, I'm going to need to really get some other tools in my toolbox. Otherwise, I am not being responsible. If anybody wants to make change in their life, you don't just go cold turkey. You got to figure out, what are some other ways that you can support yourself. So I pushed little Phoebe home in the stroller and I wrote down kind of my 2 major goals that I felt in my soul that I wanted to figure out. And one of the goals was, like I mentioned earlier, working in a grounded way, right? No more frenetic functioning, which was largely how my bipolar mania manifested itself. It was workaholism. Like my mania was not going to Atlantic City and gambling or making like bad decisions. Mine, it was really like working at an extremely fast pace, making really bold decisions. I was very decisive. Things that all seem great on the surface and actually yield a lot of wonderful results, right? This is why I was highly accomplished. But of course, with that mania, the high, there's a low, and I would have grief and crying spells, and also a numbness of, wanting, when you're constantly moving and never being, you don't really tap into yourself. So, I wanted to figure out, could I work in a way without medication that wouldn't then catapult me back into the mania of my bipolar disorder? Number one, that was the huge, big goal that I had for myself. This was probably about a year and a half ago. My other major goal was finally deeply healing my relationship with money. My womb had just become geriatric. Like I just turned 35 and my wife and I, we were ready to start actually being serious about having a baby. Average cost for IVF, at least $18,000. And I still had some issues with money despite being the leader of Ladies Get Paid and writing this book. I struggled with guilt around increasing my own prices. My desire to help others was making it extremely hard for me to stand my ground and charging more. So I needed to really get under the hood of that. I'd made so much progress in my relationship with money. I mean, clearly enough so where I felt comfortable starting Ladies Get Paid, but there was more work to be done. And especially if we were going to bring a child into this world, like I really wanted to get my shit together. And a way for me to flip the script on this being an existential crisis into an existential opportunity, a way to get this into a more hopeful headspace, was saying, hey, at least now being at this kind of rock bottom where I'm really struggling to get out of bed and get motivated, I can deconstruct my life and then reconstruct it in a more intentional way. And I also have a lot of privilege in the fact that I don't have to, every day clock into a job. I have the both benefit and also a little bit of curse of time, a little bit of time. And a way that I got motivated, or a way that I got out of my own suffering was to stop imagining myself as me and really put a scientist lab coat on to say, I'm going to treat my life like a social experiment. That way I could stop the self-blame and shame of wanting to, get out of bed, get motivated. Why aren't you doing this? Right? Like that's putting so much pressure on myself to perform or to like get graded, get an A on a test, instead of looking at everything as, listen, this is an experiment to try something new and to learn from it. And if you learn from it, you grow from it. And that is success. Okay. And one way that I sort of got into this kind of social experiment or scientific mindset to help, get me motivated again was simply by interviewing other people who they themselves had reinvented their lives. I put a call out, I think, on social media just saying, hey, if you've made positive change in your life, work, and business, I want to hear from you. And that, it got me out of my head. It gave me something to do. And I really learned, from these women. I'll be sharing their stories, I'm sure in this LinkedIn newsletter that I write, of these just amazing things that women did to really, make a difference for themselves and say, listen, I'm not happy with the way my life is going, or I don't like what I do for a living, or I'm not making enough money, and being very deliberate in navigating to a better place. I also recognized, in this, that as a society, we really don't talk enough about the messiness of self-growth. Oftentimes it's I was unhappy and here's what I did to change it. But when you are working to change it, that is hard work. That's really exhausting. And progress is not linear. And I found that even with myself and my own journey of like playing with, the amounts of medication I was taking, I would go down and it would be great. And I was so proud of myself. And then something might happen. And then I went back up. Right. And then had to contend with, disappointment and self-blame. Like I had let myself down. And, so it's like every time that I felt like I was making progress, having a breakthrough, and then something would happen and it felt the opposite, I had to recognize that like it is all progress together. Like, and this constant balance of, you're being in the moment, you are living your life, you are feeling your feelings, but you also have to maintain perspective. You got to pull yourself out. Like you can't miss the forest for the trees, they say, right? So I find that kind of navigation of like feeling the feelings, but not getting overwhelmed by them, living your life, but also, maintaining perspective. That balance is really, really hard. Again, it is all work. It was all work. Tara Schuster, who's an author, I love her. I'm actually going to a talk by her tonight. She has this great quote or way that she describes all of this, which is kind of the adjusting the process of life. And I love that. I would say that's been what my last 2 years have been dedicated to, and probably more than that, to be honest. It's probably been a solid 4 years of really adjusting the process of life. But it's been 2 years of very intentionally designing a way of being and working that feels grounded and aligned with like deeply who I am at my core, as opposed to, again, being driven by all of the flashing lights, externalities, and my bipolar, reconciling, this is the chemical imbalance that I have. Can I live a grounded life of being bipolar and do it on less medication than I had been before? It's hard. So all of this to say, this week, I wish I'd, quote, accomplished more when I look at it. I only wrote one draft of a fucking newsletter this week. But when you hear everything that I talked about, that whole processing, that took this week. That's intense. So even if I only wrote one draft of a LinkedIn newsletter, look at how much work actually went into putting that together. That is what I hope the takeaway is for you all when you reflect on how did this week go? If you didn't accomplish as much as you wanted to, I want you to dig a bit deeper and see how hard it actually was to accomplish the things that you did, or all the things you're dealing with in your life in general, the adjusting to the process of life, the messy middle, all of that. We don't give ourselves enough credit. We really don't. It's not to say to not push ourselves, to not take responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. But I just wanted, in my own reflection of realizing I didn't do enough. Wait a minute, I'm still so proud of what I did or what it took to do what I did this week and also to this point. So just a heads up, yes, this newsletter announcement on LinkedIn, it's going to go out probably on Monday or Tuesday of this coming week. I hope you look me up or follow me. I'm just Claire Wasserman on LinkedIn. And part of this newsletter is every month I'm going to dedicate the month to an area of growth that I really worked on this year. So personal, professional, and financial. Every month is dedicated to a new area of growth. And then I'll have weekly newsletters that really dive into kind of the research and the experiments and the practices that I tried to help me in those areas of growth. I'm also hoping to do maybe a monthly event as well, so that folks who are following along on the LinkedIn, have a chance to meet each other and, we can form a community together of people who want to be part of the messy middle, that, self-growth. Again, in all avenues. So I know I'm recording this technically on the Ladies Get Paid channels, and I'll continue to share stuff here, but I do hope that you come check me out on LinkedIn at Claire Wasserman, or on Instagram at Claire Gets Paid. Super appreciate you, Katie, and that beautiful comment I'm just going to read what she wrote because I really like it. She says, intense internal work is so valid. High fives to you for investing the energy into your own process of life. It's so important to keep acting according to the nature of who we are, and unraveling the truth of who we are can be tough in this culture. Love to you, Claire. Yes, totally. Right. And I've been here preaching like, go and get paid, but like for what? And what are you doing with it? Right. Become a leader of what and for why, So I just think there's a lot of, stepping back that we need to do, stepping in that we need to do. And it's all interconnected. I think if you really want to fly in your life, we got to set the foundation for where we're jumping off from. So please come join me on this journey, again, starting early next week on LinkedIn in a newsletter. I'm all talked out. Happy Friday. Happy weekend. Much love. Yeah, go get paid.